So let's just dive right in. So, wanted to bring up the topic of decoding menus and eating out, because I know we get that a lot, especially now with things kind of like opening back up. So it's been like a really popular topic, especially like ordering takeout and, with restaurants opening now, we're talking a lot more about menus. So one of the things, we love to eat meals out at our favorite restaurants, and we know that you do too. So whether you're going out for a special meal or avoiding another night cooking, oh, we have somebody else joining. Just let them in. All right, cool. So, or kind of like avoiding a night of cooking, we want to make sure that you have the knowledge and the tools to make good choices as you comb through menus. So there might, it's not going to be as black and white as when you're cooking or, cooking at home, and you know exactly what's in your food. So a lot of times maybe we're guessing on the portion sizes and kind of like assuming that there's going to be in fat in a lot of the things that you eat. So, it's not always going to be as exact as what you're doing at home, but we'll just try to do the best that we can with menus. So, although restaurants seem to have been embracing farm-to-table concepts and using natural ingredients, eating out can present certain challenges. So challenges being portion sizes are really large. Restaurant food is usually highly seasoned, but usually also high in sodium too. So that's something to watch out for, especially if that's an issue for you. And then also too, a lot of things are prepared with a lot of oil or butter, and then multiple courses make it easy to overeat. So maybe we're more likely to order an appetizer or to get dessert at a restaurant, or if we do takeout, than we are when you make food at home. So I wanted to talk about some of the strategies and tips to keep yourself on track, as you enjoy meals out at your favorite restaurants. So one of like the first kind of like tips for eating out, kind of like basics, is to order an appetizer for dinner. So if an appetizer seems to be more of an appropriate serving size for dinner, then order that. So as an example, the other night I went out to dinner and I ordered crab cakes, and the waitress said that she asked me if I wanted the entree or the appetizer size. So the appetizer just was like the crab cakes with like a little quinoa salad instead of, it was one crab cake instead of two. But it came with a side salad, and then I think the same like vegetable side as the entree. So I got that instead, because I think she said they were really big and I didn't really need to have like huge serving of crab cakes. So that was more of an appropriate size probably for what I wanted. Another tip is to split it. So for larger entrees, you can consider kind of like splitting it with another person. So if you both get maybe like a appetizer salad or like a vegetable on the side or something like that, you can split like a pasta dish or protein if it seems like a lot of food. That's one way to kind of cut down on how much you eat. Another thing too is asking for toppings on the side. So if it's salad dressing, sauce, other toppings, if you get it on the side, that can help control your portion size for like less fat and calorie intake. And then also too, looking at the menu online. So I know we a lot of times will ask you what you're doing over the weekend, if you're going to be eating out, and then we'll look up menus with a lot of you on the sessions as we're on calls. So that's always something that you can do too. If you've never done it before, is kind of like, if you know you're going to be going out to eat, you can send your nutritionist the menu through Nudge, and we can look through it and figure out a couple of choices for you. That way you can look out for what looks delicious, but also healthy before going to the restaurant. And it can also help you with pre-planning your day. So generally what we recommend, like when you're combing through a menu, is looking for things that are broiled, baked, grilled, slightly sauteed, poached, roasted, and then trying to avoid things like heavy sauces, things that are like cooked au gratin, butter sauce, breaded, cheese sauce, all these things that sound really great. Creamed, crispy, fried, deep fried. They all sound delicious, but then, you know, if you get something that's prepared that way, you can kind of just already can tell that you're adding in, you know, a bunch of extra calories. So I'm going to send what to look for and what to avoid here into the chat, just for everybody. I'm also going to send a follow-up handout kind of going through a lot of the stuff that we talked about in the tips. And like I said, if anybody has any questions as we go, just feel free to send it through the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and kind of just feel free to ask any questions too, or if you have any tips that you think might help. So I wanted to go through kind of like by meal type. Oh, there's somebody else joining us. All right, so I see a lot of familiar people in here. So for meal type, let's start with the appetizers. So for appetizers, you want to look for like broth-based soup. So a lot of times we think soup is a great option, and it is. But if you get like a creamy soup or something that has a lot of cheese, or soup with Panera, like something from the soup from Panera, I've heard it called hot cheese with broccoli in a bowl, which is probably true of their like cheddar broccoli soup. It just ends up being like so high in calories. And if you go for like the more creamy based soup, so something that's broth based, like if you're at a Japanese restaurant, like miso soup, if you're in the mood for something like that, vegetable soup. Steamed seafood is a good appetizer option, shrimp cocktail, those things like that. Melons or fresh fruit, salad. They're doing like a lot of like hummus and pita, and I've seen like a lot of grilled Brussels sprouts on appetizers. So anything like that is a good option. And then more things to look for, like for salads and salad bars, even though I haven't really seen a salad bar in a long time. But greens with veggies, chickpeas and beans on salads. Trying to cut down on maybe like the fatty toppings, like deli meats, bacon, eggs, croutons, full fat dressings. That's when your salads, you're taking something that you think would be a healthy option and kind of like turning it into more like a calorie pit. So that's something to be careful with the salads. I love a lot of the times on menus you see something that sounds like, you know, it's like an appetizer salad, but then you can add a protein to it. So it's actually something that I did over the weekend. It was like a salad. It was lots of grilled veggies and quinoa, and even like some, sorry, I'm just admitting some other people to the meeting. Some like dried fruit and nuts and those kind of things is great. And then I just added protein to it to make it kind of like more like a meal. So that's always an option that you can do too. And then for your entrees, looking for things that are like poultry, fish, shellfish, more like that protein, vegetable, starch breakdown that we already like give as an example on your sample meal plans. So that maybe with like pasta or some type of starch like potatoes, quinoa, and then keeping your sauces, maybe like a red sauce or like a soy sauce or teriyaki, something like that, with veggies and protein. Sorry, I just have to add some more people in. Okay. So, and then for sides, looking for like veggies, whole wheat pasta or grains, and potatoes. So one of the things I wanted to do was kind of like go through different cuisines and think about things that we might get like when eating different like ethnic food or different cuisines. So first with Chinese, you want to kind of go towards more, if you ever notice on the menu, they have like a healthy section, or they call it different things all the time, like on takeout menus, but it'll be like a lot of like steamed like food with like, or like lightly stir fried in mild sauce, fresh fish, chicken that isn't like breaded or fried. So it's like cooked in light wine sauce or soy sauce, like hot and spicy tomato sauce. You can always swap out brown rice for regular rice. So whenever you get like Chinese food, let's say you got like steamed chicken and vegetables, for example, or it was like lightly stir fried in like mild sauce or something, like a protein with veggies, they usually put your rice on the side in a container. What I like to do is like scoop out the half cup or like the portion that I want to have, and then just put the rest in the fridge. And usually you can have rice for a few days with the amount of, like grains that they give you on the side. It's crazy. I've done that before with, with Chinese and with Indian food. They always give you the rice separate, scoop out the portion that you want, and then put the rest away. I think you're less likely to overeat that way. This is if you do takeout, it's easier to do because then you can just measure it out in your measuring cup. But you really do get enough portions for like lunch for the rest of the week. Insane. Also too, like on a Chinese menu, bean curd is what they call tofu. So if you ever see that, that's always like a vegetarian option for protein. And then trying to kind of like stay away from anything that's tempura, which is going to be like deep fried. Anybody have any questions or tips also too with like Chinese? Or, if anybody wants to send in the chat, if they're looking for any specific different places. Somebody wrote in and said, how many large shrimp is a protein? So it would depend if you're on the 4 ounce or 6 ounce plan. I would say probably like large shrimp. If you're on the 4 ounce plan, could probably be like 4 to 5. That's a good example. You kind of want to eyeball it. So when you're looking at the portion sizes, your 4 ounce portion is going to be more like the size of a deck of cards. And then the 6 ounce portion is like the size of your fist. So you can kind of use that as a guide when you're out. These pictures are also on the food guide too, if you're not sure. So sometimes you might be eyeballing things. If you're out to eat for Chinese or Japanese, the size of a tennis ball is typically like how much rice you would get, kind of like a small tennis ball. And then if it's going to be like more like a cup, it'll probably be the size of like a big softball. So that's something to keep in mind too. Your tablespoon is like the size of your thumb. So if you're not really sure, like how much sauce is on something, if you think it's going to be like about a tablespoon, that's the size of your thumb. And then a teaspoon is like it's smaller, like your pinky, which is a teaspoon is 1 serving of fat. So I always ask clients, like, if you think your food had more than a teaspoon of oil on it, typically you always want to count your meals out as multiple fats, just to kind of go right off the bat, because they're always putting more fat than what you are at home, no matter what, even if it's like a healthy place. So for Italian, that can be pretty easy too. We know chicken parm and like breaded meats and like those kind of things are like tasty. Typically a 1/4 cup of breadcrumbs, which could be how much they use for breading, is going to be a starch. Plus if you have pasta or like something on the side with it. So that's just something to be careful of. You have to think about those kind of things, like does your meat have breading on it? So to get unbreaded meat is probably the better choice. You can always go with like a light mushroom or tomato sauce. Those are going to be your better options than like the Alfredo or like the cheesy sauces. So you want to go for like a red sauce, light sauces, or like a white wine sauce, mushroom sauce. That would be good. Grilled chicken is always going to be better than like pan fried. Going to have less oil on it probably. Always like incorporating, anytime you see like primavera on the menu, means that there's going to be vegetables. So any like pasta dish that has like grilled chicken or meat with vegetables in it is a good choice. And then kind of like remembering that portion size when you're there of the pasta. So a tennis ball is really not that big. So, you can set aside more than 1 starch for yourself if you know you're going to be going out for Italian. So something like protein vegetable starch is always a good option. Somebody sent in a question and said, Indian food, chicken vindaloo or paneer. So Typically, like a lot of the Indian dishes are made with coconut milk, and they're like a little bit more of like a creamy sauce. So I would definitely incorporate maybe a dairy and some fats when you're dealing with any type of cream sauce or creamy sauce. And then kind of like fats for cooking as well. And then paneer is like a cheese dish. So you definitely have dairy there too. And remember, your portion for dairy is 1 ounce or 1 slice of cheese. So again, like anytime you're going to be at a restaurant and you're going to be getting something that's like a cheese sauce, they're usually going to have you know, like more than 1 serving there. Paneer is not a bad option. You just have to be careful with the choice that you make. Anything that's kind of like marinated in yogurt with Indian food is a good choice, or the word tikka means pan roasted. So like chicken tikka masala is like a popular dish. I would just be careful with the amount of sauce that you have on it, and then kind of like be careful with your rice portion, but that's definitely something that you can do. Tandoori is like roasted in the clay pot. Masala sauce is great. The basmati rice, lentils, chickpeas, like Indian is a great option for plant-based eaters too, because there's always like tons of vegetarian or veggie heavy dishes. So I would say with that, you just have to remember the fat and remember the portion size there with the rice and whatnot. Somebody asked, what would be a good reference in size for pancakes? I really enjoy going out for breakfast once in a while. Sometimes the pancakes are the size of the plate. Yeah, especially if you go to a diner in New Jersey, pancakes are huge. I'm from New Jersey, just throw that out there. So for something like pancakes, I always like to use this reference of, we know that a starch is the size of a slice of bread, right? That's 1 starch. We know a bagel that's like bigger, and how thick a bagel is 2 starches. So that's something that you can use as a visual wherever you go for how to count things. So if you're looking at, you know, your plate of pancakes and your pancakes look like they're like the size of a slice of bread, then you could count each of them as 1 starch. I don't necessarily think that you need to count each one as like additional fat or whatnot. At a restaurant, probably. So maybe you could say like 2 starches and 2 fats for 2 like big pancakes. Like this is probably a normal size pancake, not the size of your plate. That's like the size of a personal pizza. And then kind of like go from there with whatever toppings you put on it. And that's kind of the same way that I do tell people to approach pizza, is like start from the bottom, the crust. Start with how much crust do you think that you have there, and then how much cheese does it look like there's on there, and then add toppings on from there. So I hope that answers your question. It really depends on like the size of the pancakes, but I would just use your reference for what you know the size of a starch is, and then compare it. So we actually kind of like already covered Indian a little bit. That was pretty much, I think I kind of covered everything I wanted to say with Italian too. It's, you know, they usually have the option to do a house salad, which is wonderful. And anytime you start with a salad, that's a great way to kind of like get some vegetables in if your dish isn't really vegetable heavy. And if you want to have an appetizer and make it a little bit more of like an event when you're eating out. And then kind of like, if you know you're having a pasta dish, if you're able to avoid the bread, then you're able to have like a little bit more pasta. Or if bread is something you really look forward to at, you know, a specific place, then just be mindful of your portion size when you're eating your meal. Mexican, I usually recommend tacos or fajitas with Mexican. I think Mexican is like one of the easier places to get food from. Whether it's like takeout or like Chipotle can be done like in a really good way. In addition to kind of like when you're going out to eat, I think you can always get like a pretty good choice for Mexican. The reason that I recommend fajitas mostly is because you can really control your portion size with fajitas the most, because you can control how much of the filling you eat and how much of the tortillas and how much cheese and how much all of those things, because they're all come separate, and then you can just assemble it as you go. So even if you stuck to, like, let's say 2 of the little flour tortillas, they're a little thicker than the corn tortillas. So I would say those are 1 starch each. So you end up, like, let's say you use 2 of the shells or the tortillas, then you have 2 starches, and then it just depends everything that you put on them. And then you could kind of like cap it depending how many starches you want to eat. And then you can just continue to eat the filling, which is mostly veggies and protein. And then, you know, like, you can keep track of the cheese or any additional toppings. So in addition to fajitas, tacos kind of work the same way. A lot of times they might come double wrapped, like they put 2 tortillas in one. I usually just recommend removing one. I don't really think you need both. So that's always something that you can just kind of like automatically do if they give you like street tacos in that way. Rice and beans are a great side. You know, if you're able to get whole wheat tortillas when you're out for Mexican, that's a great option too. Anything that's going to be like marinated or simmered, those are always better, you know, than fried. I don't really see too much fried when it comes to Mexican, but shredded chicken or always chicken, fish, those are going to be better options than more of like your pork or your higher fat meats. Enchilada sauce is tomato based, so that's typically a good choice too. And like the salsas, like usually when I go to Chipotle, I usually get all 3 just because I like to do a mixture, and those are great because they're really just made with veggies. So that's a good option. Couple things to get. I really thought there was going to be some Chipotle questions here once I mentioned that, of like Chipotle orders. So that's, you know, while we're on that topic of kind of like eating out or like fast casual, Chipotle is a place where I think that you can go and you can still like make a really good food choice. So let's say that you did a bowl. You can ask to get like half a portion of rice or half a portion of beans if you want to do both, so that you end up with 1 starch for both of those things without having rice and beans, and then getting 2 starches just from those 2 things. So that's always something that you can do. You can get a half portion of each of the rice or beans to combine and make 1. You know, anytime that you get the lettuce and then the fajita veggies, I usually always recommend, because that's a way that you can kind of like increase your vegetable intake too. And then, you know, your protein, they have the option of doing some lower fat proteins. The chicken is a great choice. And then also too, all of your toppings. So if you went for dairy or sour cream, that's always like a good maybe rule of thumb, is like get one or the other. And then kind of like go for the salsas. The guac is a great choice too, but just, you know, be aware that they give you like so much, probably more than what an actual portion size should be. So that's just, you just have to be careful with when the toppings add up. Anybody have any questions or comments about Chipotle or Mexican? Feel free to send through. Okay, so Thai and like Japanese. So with Japanese, like you can always do grilled. You can always do like a house salad to start off with. Sushi comes up a lot. I think that that's a confusing one for people. It really is going to depend on where you get your sushi from. So how much rice they put in it is really going to determine, you know, whether 1 roll counts as a full starch or if 2 rolls is a full starch. It depends. I know, for instance, like I know when I get sushi from Whole Foods, they put a ton of rice. So I know that like that 6 pieces is like a starch by itself, but sometimes there's not a lot of rice. So 2 rolls could be 1 starch. It depends. You have to imagine if you unrolled the roll, how much rice would really be there. If it doesn't look like there's half a cup laid out and patted down, then I would say 2 rolls is usually 1 starch. And then you kind of just build up from there. So it's like, what do you see in your sushi roll? Do you think there's enough protein to count as 1 full protein? Is there avocado? Is it tempura? So that's fried. Is there spicy mayo? You know, like, is there any cucumber? Go off of that. So always kind of just like start from the bottom and build in all of the toppings that you have if you're unsure on how to count things. Kind of like break it down and think about what's actually in the food. So that's usually what I say when people get like bowls or like something that they didn't make, and or they're not really sure, or if it's already mixed together. So it's easy when it's kind of like all on the side, right? But when something's mixed together, so for instance, like your Chipotle bowl, you just look and you kind of like figure out, is it a full rice portion? Do I have protein here? Do I have dairy? What are the other things that, a lot of people don't think that your chicken or your veggies are made with oil, but they probably are when they're preparing them. So you have to think about, like, how are the foods prepared? Is there extra oil? Is there sauces? Is there dairy? Is this more than one dairy? You kind of have to just eyeball to what the portions to be, and then build from there. So then I was kind of talking about like Thai and Japanese. So you always want to go for more of like the sauteed, boiled, steamed. We talked about all of those cooking methods. Any type of like lime sauce or lime juice, that's always going to be better than like any type of creamy sauce. Bed of mixed vegetables is always like a great thing to look out for. And then steakhouses are typically pretty easy. So that's a spot where you can get protein, vegetable, starch really easily. And then you just have to remember how the veggies are prepared in oil and whatnot. Let's see. Anybody have any specific questions that they are curious about when eating out or ordering food, or even like on the go? I think we already kind of like discussed that salads aren't always the best choice. I know a lot of times people order salads because they think they should, but then they're not as full later. And then they're kind of just like, they can be calorie pits if they're like made with eggs and cheese and bacon and have a lot of dressing and croutons and all these things added in. That's tough. It's a lot of times it's always better just to get it, an entree. Oops, somebody else joined. What I would like to do is, the other day I had a client who knew that she was going to be going to McDonald's with her family after somebody just asked about fast food options. So I wanted to go through and look at, anybody want to send in like a fast food place that they want to hear about? Like, we can look at the menu and look at some good options that they have there, or like some things that, we could recommend, or comb through the menu and see, look at the calorie breakdown and determine how we would count them. Somebody said, is it better to go with a heavier starch selection or a heavier fat selection if the protein and veggies are the same for both choices? I think that really depends on what you've eaten for the day. So, and where you're at. So for me, like if I'm going out for Italian food, I want to get pasta. So I know that I'm going to have a heavier starch meal at that meal, because, if it's a specific place that I know makes really good pasta and that's what I want to get there. It really depends on what you've eaten for the day and what you might eat later in the day. And, it depends on the time of day too. Like at nighttime, I know a lot of times we don't really want to do too many starches in the evening. So if you kind of want to do like more fats because you have more fats left over, that could also, I guess it would really depend on the timing and all those other options. I hope that makes sense. Somebody asked if there's any drive-through restaurants that we recommend for healthy options, relatively healthy options. So why don't we look at Chick-fil-A, for instance? I know that that's a popular one. So I know that they have like some relatively healthier options there. So I'm on the Chick-fil-A menu right now. Fun fact, I've never been to Chick-fil-A. So they have a grilled chicken sandwich. Sounds simple enough. 320 calories for the whole sandwich. So, and I'm just on the website. I didn't go anywhere like special. It says it right on here. So it's lemon herb marinated boneless chicken breast. So this chicken isn't breaded. So this isn't like a fried chicken sandwich. And it's on a multi-grain bun already. You don't have to swap it out or anything, with lettuce and tomato. So the sandwich itself is 320 calories, 41 grams of carbs, and 28 grams of protein. So I would say that you have a full protein portion here with the chicken because you have 28 grams of protein. You have, again, this is kind of like deconstructing your meal. So we know that there's 2 slices of bread essentially in the bun, and then we know that there's the chicken. So that's the full protein there. 41 grams of carbs. If you were on the last webinar, we talked about how 15 to 20 grams of carbohydrates is 1 starch. So with this having 41, that gets you 2 starches. And then it does have 6 grams of fat. So with this having kind of like reaching that level of being around 5, which is kind of like the sweet spot for fats, I would give this one a fat just because it is made at a fast food restaurant. I'm assuming that they're going to cook this chicken breast, you know, on the grill with some oil, or it's going to be picked up somewhere. And then maybe like half a vegetable for this lettuce and tomato. Give some credit there. So does that make sense? I hope everybody's nodding the way that I like broke that down. This could be like a good option that you can have from Chick-fil-A, you know, if you ever find yourself in that situation. Another thing too is I know that you can always swap out your fries for a side salad, especially at somewhere like that. Let's look at the, what's another thing people like here? So let's look at the fried chicken sandwich, because I know that that's probably what they're known for. Right? So looks like you can get it with no cheese. So that would be like something that you could pull off if you want to avoid the dairy or cheese. Sorry, just have to let somebody in the meeting. Again, like anytime you get those 2 levels of the bun, so like top and bottom bun, you're going to get 2 starches there. And then definitely a protein with the chicken patty. This one really only has like 43 grams of carbs. So it's not really so much more from the regular grilled one, but it has 3 times, or yeah, it has 3 times the fat. So that's one thing to pay attention to here, is like with it being, you know, this isn't a multi-grain bun, this is a buttered bun. So they're buttering the bun, the chicken is fried, so then you're just getting more fat here. So if this is something that you chose, you just have to be careful with your fat intake for the rest of your day. That's, you know, kind of like how I would decode that menu. Oh, somebody commented that they swap out the fries for a fruit cup, which is great. I didn't even know you could do that. Yeah, so you could do that, or a side salad. And then I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think you can get like apples on the side if you go to McDonald's. If you're a chicken nugget fan, they have the option of doing like their regular ones, but then you can also get the grilled ones. So you could do like, if you find yourself like with Chick-fil-A being like your only option, you can do the grilled nuggets and side salad. And like for the grilled nuggets, I just clicked on them. In 8, you get 25 grams of protein, and there's only 3 grams of fat and 1 gram of carbs. So this would really just count as a protein, nothing else. So for the person who asked about like what's a place where you could get like a generally healthy meal, I think this is great. Does anybody have like another place that they is like near their work, or like somewhere that you're like want to check the menu on, or like learn how to count something? We kind of went through Chipotle, we did Chick-fil-A, talked about pizza, pancakes, different cuisines, Indian. Anybody, if you unmute yourself or if you want to send it in the chat. Falafel, somebody asked. So this is going to be one of those things that really depends on like the size of the falafel. It's a good one. So generally we know falafel, also too, if people don't know, falafel is made from chickpeas, and then they're usually deep fried. So 1 cup of chickpeas will count as a half protein and a starch. So if you kind of like imagine a cup of chickpeas kind of like mashed down, if you think that the falafel filling contains that much chickpea, you could count it as a starch and a fat. I'm sorry, and a half protein. But then I would also add in fat there, because then they're broiling or deep frying them typically. You have to kind of like look and see if they're fried or if they're baked, depending where you get them from. So I would definitely count starch, probably half protein, and then maybe a couple fats at least for included in the inside of the mashed falafel. They're probably putting like some type of oil in there, and then the way that they cook it too. If it's deep fried, definitely fat, or it could be baked. So it could just be one fat. Like I said, a lot of this is kind of like not as black and white as when you're cooking at home. That's the only thing. Somebody asked about Hardee's char-boiled chicken sandwich. Let's look it up. I've never been to Hardee's either. Oh, it came up, char-broiled. Okay. So, oh, it's new. Somebody asked, is it worth it? I've never had it, so I can't speak on it. Okay, so I'm on the menu right now. Sorry, I just want to get to the chicken spot. Char-broiled chicken. Okay, so it's a chicken club sandwich, it says. I don't know if this is the right one or not. It's 650 calories. So this is a great example where we just looked at the Chick-fil-A one, and now we're looking at this one. So it's char-broiled chicken breast, which actually it's not breaded. It looks to be like it's made on the grill there, for instance. The difference here being is that it has mayo, it has bacon, and melted Swiss cheese. So this is going to be different from the Chick-fil-A sandwich in the sense that this one already has more fat with, you know, it at least has 2 strips of bacon, which is 1 fat each, plus mayo, plus probably fat coming from the cheese, also another dairy. So there's, you know, like 5 more things that we have to count here versus the Chick-fil-A sandwich. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It's like pretty much double the calorie. So if we took those things off, you could get a healthier sandwich, for instance. If this is something that you really want, you know, then I would definitely be advised of all the fat that you're taking in, and then be careful not to go over later. That's all. I always like to tell my clients that their portions are like money. So for instance, if you wanted to spend 1, 2, 3, let's say four fats on something like this, and you only have 5 for the day, you have to remember, so you cash in 4 fats, then you only have 1 left for the day that you can hang on to for later. So, you know, when you give away those fats and you give away that fat money or fat coins, then you only have 1 or 2 later. So instead of thinking of it as like the whole day kind of like unraveled because you had this sandwich, think of it as, okay, I spent 4 fats on it, I have 1 left for the day, and then that will keep you from going over later. It's a better way to look at it than letting your day spiral just because you maybe like overdid it earlier. Just cash them in, and then be careful not to exceed later. Somebody meant, okay, so whoever asked the question about the Hardee's chicken sandwich says that they swap out the bun for a lettuce wrap, but it has mayo-based sauce. Okay, So swapping out the bun is great, but honestly, I don't think the bun is your problem. I think it's all the fat that's on it. So you would get 2 starches regardless of any sandwich that you did. It does help because, I mean, you get more lettuce, but then you just kind of like have more fat. So you're dropping it down by 200 calories there, but you're still getting, you know, the fat that's in mayo and that's in bacon is the saturated, also dairy is the saturated fat, which is the unhealthy fat. So, you know, it's just going to be high in fat. That's all. And you mentioned like the mayo base being hard to decode. So the mayo base sauce. So anytime you have a mayo base sauce, we know that that's fattier than, you know, something like a barbecue sauce that's going to be a condiment because it's mostly made from sugar. So it's different. You just have to think about like the toppings. Somebody asked about newer plant-based meat alternatives, like an Impossible Burger. Is that better than traditional items like fish or shrimp? That's a really good question. I think that if you're a meat eater and you love burgers, that could be a great choice. The thing with the Impossible Burger is it does have a good amount of protein, and it's made from pea protein, so it's soy-free, which is nice for anybody who avoids soy. It does have more fat than fish or shrimp will. So I think that the fish or shrimp is probably a better choice, especially if they're cooked, just grilled or sauteed, like lightly with oil or sauce. That's going to be a better option. Just because something is plant-based or meat-free or like a substitute, that doesn't necessarily mean healthy. And I think that that's a great example of it. This is a good swap for somebody who loves beef, and it's a better choice than beef, but I don't think that it's a better choice than shrimp or fish. If you want to kind of like compare those items just because of the fat content. Anybody else have any other questions? Also too, if, you know, I thought that this would be a great topic for everybody because we had a lot of questions on this, you know, especially now with everything opening back up again. If anybody, you know, you want to see, you know, a webinar with anything that you can think of, any topics, you can always let your nutritionist know, because we want to give you guys the content, whatever it is that you have questions about or want to understand more. So again, this is recorded. It's going to be on the webinar, the OnPoint portal, if you want to go back and look at it again. I'm also going to send you a handout in a follow-up email, kind of like discussing the stuff that we talked about, and then you know, study up on your portion sizes. Somebody asked, how do we fit a slice of cake once in a while? Typically, I use that bread analogy too with the cake. So with your baked goods, we know that they're always going to be a starch and then also probably a fat as well because they're made with oil usually. So, you know, a slice of cake, if it's the size of like a slice of bread, could be 1 starch. Typically, you're probably going to get 2 starches from a slice of cake. That gives you about 200 calories right there off the bat. And then I would definitely count in a fat or 2 for the baking. And then if there's icing, let's say a dairy, and then you're probably ending up with like 2 starches, a dairy, and at least 1 fat for a slice of cake. So again, think about that money analogy. If you want to kind of like cash in that money for a slice of cake, totally fine. But then you just have to remember all the portions that you're left with for the day, and then utilize those to build your meals and your meal choices for the rest of the evening. Or save the 2 starch and dairy and fat for the cake for later. I hope that makes sense. Any other questions before I let you all go? All right, well, like I said, I'm going to send out a summary of everything that we talked about. Let your nutritionist know if there's something that you want another topic that you want to see. If anybody has any questions for me directly, you can send me an email or follow up with your nutritionist. But thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks where we'll talk about meal prep. So we're doing a meal prep series. We're going to start with breakfast, lunch, and then go to dinner. It's going to be fun. So I hope to see you guys there. Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.